the action network called Actienetwerk Gas Terug. It's like gas back, so reducing gas. And we've got the focus on energy. This is us. This is our story. Our goal is to reduce 50% energy use in 30 cities in North Holland and Flevoland before 2030. That are 2 districts of the Netherlands. And we believe that the most sustainable and cheap energy is the energy that does not have to be generated. So just don't use as much energy anymore. So we are forcing breakthroughs for energy-saving initiatives with a systematic and practical approach, and show that these can be a simple, sustainable, and cheap alternative. So in one line, we are a pipeline for initiatives that save energy. Let me get back to you on where we started in 2022 and where we are now in 2024. We started in 2022 when the war in Ukraine, Russia started the war in Ukraine, and in the Netherlands we use quite some gas from the Ukraine, and we didn't want to finance that war. We got gas from Russia. We didn't want to finance Putin for his war. So we said, okay, we have to get rid of using the gas from Russia. And that meant that we have to create a 15% gas reduction use in 2022. And already we figured we can't do that alone. So we invited a lot of companies, foundations, smart-minded people to think with us, how can we do this? How can we set this goal? And that's how this action network started. And in the beginning of 2023, we got to 19% of gas reduction. So we were celebrating, we hit our goal, we were happy, but we also had this really nice, brilliant network of a lot of people that have a warm heart for the environment, wanting to reduce energy. And so we needed a new focus. We wouldn't just want to say, well, we finished our goal and let's just stop here, because for the environment, 15% gas reduction is not enough. We needed to do more. So we set a new focused on creating a new foundation. And since the beginning of 2024, we are this new foundation with our own board and our own director, and well, still having our goal. And we have a new goal, and that's what I said, the 50% energy saving. And in my opinion, the winning concept are these 3 pillars. That first of all, we are a coalition of the willing. So we only focus on where the energy is. So if somebody has a good idea, but nobody feels the same, there are so many ideas, just focus on where the energy is, where different people say, okay, I want to spend some time to get this through. Then we embrace it, and it doesn't matter where anybody comes from. So everybody is welcome. No idea is too small or too big. We only focus on where the energy is. And then we work with pilots. And the reason why we do that is that it's good for the risk management. You can try out things with small risks. We can still learn. It helps to validate, and we can improve things or ideas. A lot of ideas are still are just born, and well, have still some child diseases, as we call it in the Netherlands. And it's also about cost control. We don't have a lot of money as an action network, and for everything that we do, we have to find new money. So if we keep it small in pilots with different people wanting to invest just a little bit, then we can do a lot. And if something works, then we can communicate about it. It helps with then we can scale up. First, we scale up in our 30 cities, and we scale up area transcending. So if there is a good idea about, for example, we a person heating, don't heat the whole house, but heat just the person in the house. If somebody is living alone in a big house, why heat up the whole house? And so you can also just focus on heating only this person. And all the things that we learned from this pilot, we can also use in restaurants, for instance, on the terraces or in the healthcare system. And after that, we are scaling up to the whole country. And we do that by sharing knowledge, and we make easy do-it-yourselves after we find something that works. So that's the concept that we use as a network. And what we do, our role as a network, is we have a director's role. So we have this really broad network with very diverse composition, over 120 active people from companies, trade organizations, private initiative, governments, institutions, and utilities have now joined it. And the number of participants is growing all the time. And somebody has to take control. So that's our role in this network. And we do that by focusing on connecting. So as a director, we connect different organizations and people across policy areas and value chains. We focus on collaboration between and across these layers, and it's crucial for realizing the energy saving potential, because a lot of people are just focused on their own area. But if you work together, then you can do so much more. And nobody is, sometimes we see that somebody is figuring out, some people are also busy figuring out the same thing. If you just connect them together, you can figure it out together, and that has a lot of more impact. And then we work proactive. So our proactive working method can be characterized as social pioneering. Connections are made that are often missing to translate policy plans into concrete steps. And the last thing is we are results orientated. So we seize opportunities, follow the path of energy, invest, think from possibilities, tackle complexity, and in this way remove bottlenecks. We continue where others stop to achieve concrete results. Oh, that goes. And how we do it, like I said, we identify bottlenecks. We work with breakthrough tables. So if somebody has a good idea and they don't, it doesn't work, then we focus on how to break through, and we make a do-it-yourself about it, so other people don't have to hit the same wall. We create networking events, we create knowledge sharing sessions, and everything that we do and that we create is open source. So everybody can add to it, everybody can download from our website. We are totally transparent. We don't have secrets because, well, we just want to save energy with everybody and save the planet. So we won't keep it for ourselves. And that's, in a nutshell, what we do and how we do it. So are there any questions?
Carlinka, thank you so much. Any questions for Carlinka? And I've put a bunch of links in chat to the Action Network's website, to some of our websites, as well as articles I've written on the Action Network, and a previous interview we did with Carlinka on the network as well. Those links are in chat for folks who want to do more deep dives with her on this work. Any questions? And if not, we will continue. And if you have some, Julia, it looks like you're about to say something. Oh, great.
Yeah, I do, but I'll cede the floor to DeAndre first.
Perfect.
I was just wondering, given the nature of why you decided to, create your own energy source, was there any pushback from withdrawing from Russia's supply, or were hearts and minds aligned, just given, given the war going on?
Yes, given the war, it was it made it easy because everybody was really, that's where the energy was. Everybody was, okay, we really have to do it. And it was also made easy in the first year because of this war, there were also pipelines shut down, gas pipelines. So the energy costs in the Netherlands were way beyond and very expensive. So a lot of people also needed to save energy because they couldn't pay it anymore. So that made the first 15%, well, not that easy, but easier. And now there are, from our government, a lot of methods to keep the energy prices down again. And that makes it way harder for us to get the other percentage of energy savings because people don't feel it in their wallets anymore. But yeah, in the beginning, we didn't feel any throwbacks. Everybody was going for the goal. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Question.
So I'm curious now, are you sort of pivoting any of your strategy given that sort of immediate win and the financial piece and the war, like now that you're further down and you're going for an even more ambitious goal, have you needed to pivot your strategy to get people to achieving that next goal?
Yes, one thing that we learned is that it really helped to have a reasonable goal for a short period of time. That's very clear. So we are looking and talking about it, and we're still learning, but looking for, okay, this is 2030 is too long. So how can we break it up in just small parts to keep the energy going and rising? And we're all the time looking for new urgencies also in the news about how we can connect to different people. And it's just, we have the politics in the Netherlands are getting worse in case of the climate change. The new government doesn't feel a lot by saving the planet. I'm afraid. So that's also hard for us in the funding, because normally we could go to the government and say, oh well, this is good for the climate and help us, sustainability things, stuff like that. And now if we use those terms, then they're like, well, we don't see it that way. So we really have to change our strategy to the government to get fundings. And now it's more like, okay, there are these poor 100% Dutch people that have to live in the cold because they can't pay it. But if you save energy, then so we have to adjust all the time. But we've got our goal clear, and that helps.
Got it. So now it's more energy affordability kind of
Yeah.
messaging that you're looking at. That's interesting because I think a lot of US cities also have that in common. So
Yeah.
that's helpful.
Yeah, I love how you stay agile and pivoting off the news cycle, how you keep it short term in terms of goal setting so that people can understand, realize it, access it. And to your point about a government that is less friendly to climate action, that is something we're seeing across Europe and increasingly in US cities and potentially with our national government with elections. So these are new realities that we have to adapt to. So I appreciate how adaptable you're being, you're forced to be in terms of making the case.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm so happy with things like this and all the people who are here.
Well, I so appreciate your presentation, and feel free to stick around, but if you have to go, please do feel free to go if you need to go. And if folks have continued questions for Karolinka, please put it in chat and we can relay if she's left the call already. But let's move on to Oslo. I'm going to put a couple links in chat.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Karolinka. I really appreciate it. Appreciate all the good work you're doing with the Action Network. The Business for Climate Network in Oslo is 170 businesses that have partnered with the city of Oslo to reach their ambitious goals. And it was started in 2010, so it's evolved a lot since then. And given that a lot of our European cities are on leave, on vacation in July and August, and we were lucky enough to have Karolinka, our speaker, Kaya, wasn't able to actually join this call, but I interviewed her in advance, and the link is there, but we're just going to share a few minutes of that interview. The full link is in chat already, but let me just share screen. We're going to share a few minutes, and then we'll get into a Q&A if you have any questions about Oslo's Business for Climate Network. Let me just share sound. Well, welcome everyone. We're thrilled to be here with Kaya from the city of Oslo, who runs Point along with her colleagues on this Business for Climate Network that we've been talking about in the webinar. And she graciously offered to spend some time with us today to talk about kind of lessons learned, how they created buy-in for this work, why it's beneficial to the city. So Kaya, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here.
And so let's jump in. So the first question we have for you is, what are the benefits to the city of Oslo with this Business for Climate Network, and why should other cities consider building a similar network?
There are several benefits. I can start by saying that Oslo has quite ambitious climate targets, and that our network sort of allows for a dialogue and cooperation between the city and the business sector on how we are to reach these climate goals together. I don't think Oslo is unique in like that our sort of our emissions. We are quite dependent on the business sector to participate in to reduce them, as the sort of services that we provide as a city in Oslo, at least, they account for less than 15% of our emissions. So we need both the public and the business sector on board. So this network allows us to have quite extensive dialogue on policies on our climate work. So we create these arenas for dialogue with the comprehensive discussions on both the policies and the measures between the city agencies and the business sector. And it allows us, there are, I would say, mainly sort of two benefits for us. We are both able to get the business sector sort of on board and to support the city climate strategy, and nudging them to take climate actions for their own companies, and also sort of be ambassadors for the climate targets of Oslo. On the other hand, we're also able to discuss the policies and measures with the targeted sectors, so that our policy instruments are somewhat aligned with what is feasible, and that we talk to the companies, and they're able to sort of say what they're able to do when, and if we go too fast, or what is a good sort of scope for the different targets. And of course, the business sector must adapt to the higher demands of zero emission solutions. But we strive to give them predictability and to sort of invite them into the discussion before we've put sort of an answer to what we want to do. And I think that's it's a benefit for the city to be able to sort of move together in the same direction.
Excellent. Thank you for that. When, it's been around for a bit, but how are you creating political buy-in for this work and private sector buy-in, both at the beginning, the founding of it, and obviously it's an ever-evolving process, but can you talk a little bit about how you build that political buy-in among politicians and then the private sector buy-in for this?
So it was actually a politician who started the network back in 2010. So it came as an initiative from the city mayor then, who wanted to have a network for dialogue between the public sector and the private sector. And from then on, it's evolved quite a lot, moved around in different departments in the city government, now landed in the climate department that was created in 2016, at the same time as the climate strategy for the city that we use now, which is quite ambitious, was made. So the political buy-in, I guess it wasn't that difficult. And also now we have vice mayor is actually the official leader of the network, and we're the secretary that does all the work and hosts the events with the companies. So and that's also, I think, a key to one of the successes of the network is that on our events and when we do sign the climate contract and also City Hall, the politicians are there and part of the conversation, which I think is important. And that's also, I think, on the other hand, also important buy-in for the business sector. They get to discuss climate policies with the politicians and with the bureaucrats, and we get to sort of inspire and challenge each other. And I think that's something the business sector also is interested in. And I think the network has grown also quite organically with the just higher attention the climate cause has gotten the past years, and also with the climate strategy of Oslo being having climate goals that are very ambitious. The business sector in Oslo notice the policies, so they want to be involved.
Excellent. Last question. Any lessons learned from establishing this Business for Climate network? Things you might do differently now? That's the teaser. So she continues to talk about things like scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, as well as ensuring that these businesses aren't greenwashing their work, and how they've set up a third party to help monitor and evaluate and do accounting with these businesses. So I encourage folks to check out the remainder of that interview when you have a chance. Again, it's in chat, the link's in chat. It's only another 4 minutes, but feel free to check it out because she does address those issues as well. She too offered up any kind of consultation. So if you're interested in checking in with her, emailing with her, let me know or Julia know, and we'll connect you, because she's offline now with vacation and holiday, but she's happy to chat. This is her work. She's full-time Business for Climate, and she's keen to help storytell this elsewhere. So perhaps some of you already have a network set up, Businesses for Climate network or something similar. They've grown it over the years. They've learned over the years. They've scaled up the requirements over the years in terms of the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions reporting, et cetera. And so she's happy to chat with any of you. Are there any initial questions? Because I had a much longer conversation with her, and I might have some of those answers now. If not, email me or connect with me or Julia, and we can connect you directly with Kaya. And if there aren't...
I mean, I have 2 very brief questions, but I know... Oh, Matthew, sorry, did you have a question?
Hi, everyone. This is Matthew. I'm from the city of Phoenix. Thank you for the sharing of that presentation. The questions I have, so our climate action plan was approved in 2021. And before that, we've been trying to get businesses on board with it or kind of form these kind of partnerships too. So a couple questions for you are that you might know or not. Who funds this kind of activity? Who funds like all these emissions inventories for them, and who funds like this organization? And then the other part is, what are the benefits to the companies? Like, do they get any benefits out of like financial incentives or anything like that?
2 quick things, and then I would love to put you in touch with Kaya because I know she'd be able to answer this more accurately. There is a fee because this is taking time, and the city of Oslo can't handle all the questions coming in from 170 businesses. And there are tiers of engagement. So 30 of the 170 are super active, super ambitious, super aggressive in their monitoring and evaluation, their accounting, and their scope 1, 2, and 3. And then there are other levels. They've also created some drop-down menus for forums on specific topics that they're engaged. So there's a peer learning opportunity for the business. She did mention briefly in the video that I showed, some of it is the political import of being in City Hall with the mayor, being lauded for their leadership in this space. So business reputation, PR, is definitely a part of it in terms of the incentive. And what they do at that moment when they're signing the contract, and they do this annually, businesses have to stand up and give updates on their goals as a forcing mechanism, as a positive social norming forcing mechanism to get businesses to always be conscientious of and ratcheting up their commitments in this work. So they're mindful of what businesses are incentivized by. In terms of this third party, nonprofit. I don't know how that relationship emerged in terms of the third party taking on some of the work of accounting so that the city of Oslo didn't have to answer to 170 businesses. And if there was a funding relationship in there, that would be a question for Kaya in terms of, did the city of Oslo help fund this third party to do some of the accounting, or did the third party get its own funding from foundations to do the accounting process, scope 1, 2, and 3 with businesses? But again, happy to put you in touch. Great questions. Happy to put you in touch with her.
I think the other thing that she had talked about was that in terms of what's in it for businesses is that I think part of what they want to do is obviously be ambitious and push businesses. And a lot of businesses also just want a stable regulatory environment. Like they want to know what's going to happen so that they can plan for it effectively. And I heard her saying also that by partnering with them, they can try to sort of meet in the middle a little bit on their policy and what is rolled out when, so that it's both ambitious and feasible and businesses know what's coming. So I think there's a certain amount of that as a benefit for the folks who are involved as well. But I think your questions about funding especially are really on point, and so we should follow up with her and see. And I know there's a lot of other US cities who are trying to engage with businesses as part of their caps and their other like multi-sector partnerships to achieve that. And so there might be a deeper conversation available there, and maybe even some other more detailed materials from her that would explain a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of how this is actually set up, you know, and what's really worked and what hasn't. And that could potentially be really helpful, I think.
Since she kindly offered to be in touch with anyone, I just went ahead and put the email in chat. So Matthew, feel free to follow up with her. Name that, if you can name how you came across, say Michael Shank, pass along the email to follow up after this webinar. That'll be helpful, but feel free to reach out to her. All right, I think that's it on Oslo. Julia, over to you for all things Dublin.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce Sabrina Decker. Hey, thank you so much for coming. Sabrina is in Dublin and is going to share some stories about how Dublin is using partnerships to accelerate their climate action plan. Sabrina, over to you.
Thank you. And I'm going to hopefully share my screen. My computer is slightly frustrating today. Okay. Can you all see that? Yeah.
Looks great.
Okay. Is it in? It's kind of done something weird on me right now, but okay. Okay, so I guess thank you for the invitation to speak. And I guess one of the reasons that Dublin was asked to is we're partnered currently with San Francisco and kind of in the midst of planning. We have them coming over for a study visit next week. So we're excited to kind of talk to them about some of the work we're doing in the circular economy and all the bits around that and getting to net zero. But this is just a quick whistle-stop tour of what we're doing. So Dublin is part of the EU mission. So we took the opportunity, being part of the EU mission, to take our first plan, which was good. It was from 2019 to 2024. For us, it was quite siloed. We had targets that we achieved. And for us in Ireland, the emissions targets were specific to our operations and service delivery. So our portfolio of buildings, our portfolio fleet, and that's it. So in Ireland, local government is really restricted in what we can do. We can't seek outside investment, and we have to do with what we can with government money to do anything. So we've had to get a little bit creative. So with the mission, we took the opportunity to kind of restructure our whole plan and make it a little bit more about systems innovation and kind of build it around this theme of Dublin, the city, as our home, and how do we actually treat the actions and make it a more vibrant city. So we moved away from thematic areas to foundations of a plan to kind of think about a resilient city and what that looks like. So how do we have to work with external stakeholders to build it stronger? Because Ireland, a lot of our critical infrastructure comes in at Dublin City's remit. So how do we work with our stakeholders there to build that? How do we increase the green cover of the city? We actually have quite a low green cover, so we're trying to increase that to 25 square meters per person. So that's kind of looking at our resources. I think everybody thinks Ireland is green and wonderful, and it is green. Currently, it's very green and very wet right now, for unusual, but we're dealing with it. We're all struggling and hoping for summer to arrive. looking at a creative city, and that's a little bit more about partnership and how we actually get into how do we work with other people and how do we drive the transition for us. And then a social city is about just people in general living around the city. How do they move about? Just for Dublin in specific, and a lot of local authorities in Ireland, we're only responsible for active travel, so promoting active modes. And just to say, Dublin is a very walkable city. Some people just choose to not see it as a walkable city because of the rain. Which is a silly excuse, but some people have it. So we're really trying to encourage active modes, because we also have a kind of another challenge in Ireland is that our population health is, we have an obesity kind of crisis. So there's a Healthy Ireland for All policy. So trying to build that in. So great, we have this fabulous plan. And of course, it's always challenging. So I said we were trying to be creative. So I'll explain this picture because I can see Michael's face going, what on earth is this? So Ireland has a Creative Ireland program that actually has been looking at creative climate action. So we've been actually working with creatives to actually start communicating better about climate action. So these lovely ladies have been doing climate cabarets. So thankfully, I hired them on to help us with a public consultation, and I didn't lose my job. I learned that a colleague can do the worm and other colleagues can dance. So it was great. It actually really helped kind of do a bit of intergenerational kind of climate justice and climate conversations. So, and now everybody hates me in the red phones, but we're okay with that because it is an emergency. So it's a creative way of doing it, but this all kind of started actually with another project that we had called Eat the Streets. So that kind of started with this idea of how do we have a conversation we're a capital city in a country that is largely agricultural based, but people forget that as an urban city, like I think of Bill Rees's work around ecosystem services and ecological footprinting, that we are dependent on rural areas. So we decided to have a conversation about food and climate change. People didn't realize it was about food and climate change, and people actually thought it was more about a food festival in the city. So we got a little bit sneaky. People have bought into it. We're now in our 4th year. And next week, we're also launching our food strategy that actually came out of that. So it is actually looking at a conversation that's easier to have, and that it actually makes climate action very tangible, because it does start at home. It starts in your kitchen. And somebody from the Environmental Protection Agency in Ireland gave us our best quote that we've been running with for the last 4 years. And that's not stopping food waste is the one climate action you can take 3 times a day. So we're doing that. But the other thing that we're doing, and that we're really thankful for, is that while we were announced to be part of the EU mission, and I think my computer has frozen. Okay, here we go. Ireland was also looking at systems innovation and redesigning our transport system for net zero. So fortunately, we had the OECD doing that work. And because I was being interviewed in that context, we asked the OECD to come on board to help us with what we're doing. And so we're looking now at doing a challenge-led approach in our implementation. So that's taking challenges, bringing different people together, because like I said, it's about us taking a systems approach. So bringing engineers, planners, architects, landscape architects, young people together, artists, to have a conversation. So right now we are actually focusing on children's movement through the city. And this is a slight bit of nepotism. That is my 3-legged dog, that we actually did do a bit of a creative project around getting him, because I adopted him, and we discovered his one favorite thing is making you cycle around on a bicycle with him on your back. So just having him as a little story for kids to actually communicate to us about how they feel about their commute to school. So what we've been doing during COVID is we took a crisis and turned it an opportunity to actually introduce school zones, not something we actually do have in Ireland. So North America, we have the 30K zones, or in Canada, we definitely do, but we've been struggling with that in the Irish context. So we've been putting pencil bollards up, and one of the challenges for our cycling officers was getting kids to use the infrastructure and parents to use it appropriately. So we did this booklet, but now we want to take it a step further and actually think about not just their movement to school, but their movement to play. So we have an area of the city that's quite hard to engage with. There's a lot of social deprivation in the area. It was the area that actually did make the news back in November. So we're just kind of looking at how do we actually make that area safe for young people, make them actually enjoy the space that they have, because we've been building a cycle track there and actually introducing green infrastructure into that area. And it's one of the areas of the city that has the least amount of green cover. So we're just at the beginning of this process. So where we're kind of at is we actually started the project in October. We were looking at the CAP. We had a lot of meetings with internally to kind of identify the idea. We had the CAP launch, and then we were kind of looking at building the challenge team. So we now have that. So we've kind of at that a little bit further ahead. Sorry, there's a lot of clicking on this slide that I forgot about. So we've been doing, and we're hoping to get over the summer right now, is we're actually looking at activations in that area. And then we're hoping to do a workshop with a lot of different stakeholders in our neighboring local authorities to actually look at what we learned in this process of taking a challenge-led approach and how we actually engaged communities in this and what the outcomes what the lessons were. And then we'll be disseminating those hopefully in December 2024 as part of the larger EU mission network. And that is it from my side.
That is so great. I love it. I have a lot of questions for you, but I want to give some space first to some of the other cities on the call to see if folks have any questions for Sabrina. Yeah, Genevieve.
Hi, I absolutely loved that presentation. I love how you are really finding that intersection between, art and humanities and climate. I think that's super powerful. Just a quick question. I'd love to learn more about everything you're doing with food waste and with the local food culture and scene in Dublin. Is that something I can just find on your website? Or
Our
where
website is hell. Sorry, just gonna say that bluntly. You can check a look at the Eat the Streets website. So it's just eatthestreets.ie. And what we've done with that is technically I'm not supposed to have that website, but we have it anyways. We've kind of collated all the resources from communities. So there's stories, there's history there, and then there is information on stopping food waste. Typically that campaigning is done at the national level for us, but we've been looking at the circular economy around creating, we have a really cool place called Spade Enterprise Kitchen. And so it's basically a hub. So we're looking at how do we actually do that and integrate that piece of what do we do with the food waste after? Because we do have a high amount of that happening. So how do we bring it into the agriculture sector?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your presentation today.
You're welcome.
I'm also curious to hear about how the cultural creatives humor and engagement piece is going. Like, what have you learned? What's really worked? What hasn't worked? And also, was it hard to do that? Because I know there's a lot of US cities and members who are really keen to bring in more of that and to bring some humor and some play into the work, but sometimes it can be difficult to convince government colleagues to do that, or there's a lot of people are risk averse, like, oh God, what if we get blowback about something? So I'm curious kind of how you got that to happen and what you've learned.
I'm a bit cheeky, so I'm Canadian, but this is the one thing I've learned living in Ireland is how to be a little bit cheeky. There's a thing about ask for forgiveness rather than permission. So there is a comedic writer, Colm O'Regan. He actually has a book called Climate Warrior, not warrior fighter, but warrior panic. So he was publishing a book around the time that we got announced that we're part of the mission, and we were doing conversation about. We wanted to kind of do a check-in with national government academics on where we were at in terms of our progression on climate action. And we were trying to get the Taoiseach involved, so our prime minister. He unfortunately bowed out, then we were offering somebody else. And then I just said to my manager at the time, I'm like, can we just, he kind of said no. And then I was like, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to get him to do it. So we did the whole thing. Everybody was quite sad and depressed by the second session of the panel discussion. Then I was just like, you know what, you close it out. Everybody loved it. So kind of knew that there was an opportunity to do that, and that just humor kind of changes the conversation of it. And I just say, like, just do it. The person that does the climate cabaret, she is a friend, and like we do kind of, it is that bit of like, sometimes you just have to be brave because it's a different way, it's a different perspective of looking at the conversation. And that was just a valuable piece. Like one of our managers, he really appreciated one of the characters that the climate cabaret has is Johnny Bunyan Rings, and how Johnny Bunyan Rings goes to concerts and, is responsible with what they do and they leave no trace. And so it was a really fun way of doing it. And then just even the other thing of like, one of the other things is there's something creative in that as well. One of the performers, she does the sonification of sound, sonification of data, just taking an information thing and kind of showing, and it's really powerful and it does change your perspective. And then there's also a melting glacier dance that another person does. So it's just, I really would encourage just doing it and just exposing people to it, because it's a different way of thinking. And like right now we have a biodiversity artist in residence who's working for us. So we're just running with it. Like, we're fortunate that we have a creative sector that's quite nationally is quite good. So they kind of do push. So we're just pushing it.
That's awesome. That's really, really great. Um, Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I know we are a little bit further along in here than we thought, but these have all been awesome presentations and discussions. So I'm totally good with it. I am curious, just super briefly, if for folks on the call, if there is a unique multi-level partnership or storytelling campaign that you have that you would want to put a link in just for other people to look at, get some more ideas, share what you're doing, or if in this moment any new partnerships or campaigns or even a seed of an idea that's come up from this conversation, if there's anything that's come up for you kind of in this or that you want to learn more about. I'm already like, I want to do a separate session with all of you. Sabrina, I want like all the food things. I want a creatives thing. We should do a whole new call for cities on all of these pieces, because again, I know so many USDN and CNCA members are trying to answer these exact questions. And I just love what you guys have presented on that. I know Ann Arbor's doing a bunch of cool stuff. I know Phoenix is. Y'all don't have to share it right now either. I don't want to put you on the spot, but
Also, just to flag the storytelling opportunities in the coming months as we continue to lift up CHAMP-like work, even if it's not specific to CHAMP in the NDC sense, the nationally determined contribution sense. But as you can tell, and those who know Julia and me now, we're storytellers, and so we're keen to help storytell some of the amazing work you're doing in the CHAMP world.
and I also want to make sure we've got our friends from CDP on as well, who are also going to be hosting a really great webinar on CHAMP coming up, I believe, and also have some info on how you can report your awesome work and make sure it's all rolled up as part of it. So I want to make sure they have a chance also to share with everyone what that's all about.
Thank you so much, Julia. It's been such a pleasure listening to these stories. You know, sometimes when you're working with hundreds of cities and all these different things, you lose sight of what's really happening on the ground and the fun and the passion and you know, the really concrete impacts at the community and neighborhood level. And so it's just constantly inspiring to hear those things, and I really appreciate the stories being told there. My name is Idan Sasson. I'm a senior manager with CDP, and I wanted to share a bit about kind of some of the data side of CHAMP and the role of reporting, and try to put it in also somewhat of a lighter light, since reporting can sometimes be seen as homework, but kind of making the case for the pitch around why this is really important. And you know, I think in the context of CHAMP, the way I see CHAMP and the breakthrough here is really trying to connect the dots between the bottom up work that's happening at the city level, at the town level, at the county, state level, and what has long been a party-led or kind of nation-state process at the COP level. And so there are all of these non-party actors, cities, towns, businesses as well, that are doing so much work that by and large has not been acknowledged or had a kind of formal seat at the table at these international negotiation processes that are oftentimes overseen by national governments, national ministries. And so there's really an opportunity and a breakthrough after so many years of advocacy by lots of city folk to have a seat at the table and to be acknowledged and to engage with their national governments directly. And this is really that opportunity. And so, you know, what this oftentimes does come down to is really data and showcasing the impact that cities are doing, that other entities are doing. And so this is really around reporting, being able to track that sort of progress, those bench lines, those benchmarks in the work. And so most of you are likely quite familiar with CDP and CDP ICLEI track and the annual reporting work that we oversee. And so this is really around being able to have high quality data that is able to inform some of these multi-level policies, initiatives, and investment opportunities. And sometimes that could be within the jurisdiction of a city itself. And so the data that comes in through CDP ICLEI track has really informed work that we do on city business partnerships, a partnership that we have with C40 and the World Business Council on Sustainable Development. The City Business Climate Alliance has enabled us to be able to pair cities with corporates and leading businesses to understand where are the aspirational overlaps in terms of climate targets, and then what are some of the really key kind of granular data details that can inform whether it's city policy or sustainable business councils, and that's just at the city level, but also really expanding through to the national level, understanding how's the work that that subnational entities are doing, feeding into nationally determined contributions and some of that high level work. And so in terms of some of the benefits or understanding the importance of disclosure and reporting, making the case for it, one is really understanding this as a one-stop shop. Reporting through CDP ICLEI track and CDP, there are a number of campaigns that kind of report through it. And so whether it's ICLEI or C40 or the Global Covenant of Mayors or Race to Zero, Race to Resilience, WWF's One Planet, this is really a one-stop shop to be able to have that standardized, comparable information, really trying to be efficient there and not have many different places to go to, but to be able to report that data through that. The second would really be on the types of insights and knowledge sharing that come through reporting, being able to compare to peers in the field with that type of specific comparative data. There's so much value in being able to talk about a specific policy, and then there's also a lot of value in being able to look at different metrics and ways that counterparts are looking at their progress. And then our staff members ourselves, working with disclosures and cities regularly throughout the cycle, providing feedback on reporting, providing feedback on science-based target setting, number of webinars and guidance materials to do so. And then ultimately what this type of data and reporting yields is gaps and progress. And so understanding, if you have a 5 or 10 year vision, this is really a helpful way to understand year on year, how are you doing in terms of getting there or looking back retrospectively. And so there's a host of different kind of ways of understanding that. And then, last but certainly not least, is really seizing this opportunity to showcase tangible investment opportunities. In the US context, that means right now, all the talk and thinking is around IRA implementation. We at CDP are working with with recipients of IRA funding to showcase tangible projects that are being reported through CDP ICLEI track for potential funding, financing, and technical assistance as well. And so that's in the US, but a global context as well. This is an opportunity to really showcase tangible investments, whether that's the national level funding or financing from private sector and financial institutions. And so some key points there on the kind of benefits of disclosure, and then some real tangible next steps and dates. The portal is open in terms of disclosure. We have a big webinar coming up on July 15th in terms of tips for reporting. We'll be covering CHAMP there as well, as Julia had mentioned. And this is a bit of the timeline. We have the open window for the scoring deadline through the end of September. And so any questions you might have, happy to share the links to this in the chat and in the slides that maybe come out after this. And we have a team of folks on hand ready to talk and think through this.
Thank you so much. I know it's the top of the hour, so folks will have to hop. I just want to say thank you again to everyone for coming, for speaking. Put some links in the chat for additional support that GCoM is providing to folks. Please do check those out. And stay tuned for more updates and sessions. And I'm going to click this link. Thank you, DeAndre.
Yeah, it's our annual report. We just got it out there for year 4 of our plan 820, bringing the city to carbon neutral and sustainable by the year 2030. So just want to share that with you all.
Awesome.
There's a lot to highlight, but things from getting bike lanes and we did our 820 week. We have Green Business Challenge, home energy assessments, home energy programs, and we just launched our home energy rebate program. Let's see, EV chargers across the city. We support our legislators. There was just a new ordinance about eliminating gas-powered leaf blowers, so we're providing funding and resources to businesses and residents that are making the switch over to electrify those. And we are working on a new engagement strategy and trying to be one of the great things about our office is not only are we doing the work, in sustainability, but we are taking it out to the community and everyone's responsible for that. So coming up with a great strategy to make sure it's equitable, especially in situations like we're trying to work on having a geothermal neighborhood, the lowest income neighborhood in the city of Ann Arbor, but making sure that does not lead to any kind of gentrification, that the long-term residents there, the Black and brown residents there are not being pushed out because they will have, these attractive, sustainable homes and not bringing in new people that will push them out. So just making sure that we're doing everything in a spirit of equity and sustainability here in our office. So just want to share that really quick.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Have a great Thursday. Thank you. And we will be seeing you all again soon.
Thanks, everyone.